appreciate Felix and then everybody from COBE. So really cool. But let me tell you this, I got here for the, tech mic check, and the shades were not working. And this is my background. But using AI, and maybe this is a very use case, I absolutely hate building decks, man. Just staring in front of the screen and then thinking about the layout, the actual design for the presentation. But in 5 minutes, I did this. Oh, no, hold up, I pressed the wrong button. Yes, there you go. Why? Because now the shades are not working, but then we make it work. And isn't that beautiful? Because this would take, maybe a couple of hours just to change the whole styling and everything. And yes, where is it? My terminal. These days, I'm always here. Where is it? Oh yeah, I just rebooted my machine, but I can share later if you're curious. But this is just to showcase firsthand what you can do with it in very practical terms. Okay, but let's go back. Product UX and the machine. What do we do when AI, who does what when AI builds the interface? But before we talk about it, let me just quickly introduce myself. And by the way, I use AI for this, by the way. So I just upload a picture, say, hey, Gemini, I want you to animate it, and then look at that. Man, it's so ugly, Jesus Christ. But anyways, this is me, guys. So yes, I've been working for over 16 years, but I specialize myself building zero to one products. So essentially building something from the ground up. And those are some of the roles. I've done a lot, right? I feel old as I was just designing this presentation because I started out as a software engineer. And then when cloud became a big hit, and then I moved to an infrastructure, a project management position, just helping companies migrate to open clouds. Right now, we commoditize that, but it was a big deal back in 2013 or so. Then, yes, I was doing what is called program management, essentially just managing large-scale projects. Think of like 25, 30 projects that together support a strategic goal. This is what I was doing. And then I found myself essentially in product management. So that is my passion, like the glue to different functions. I live and breathe product management, but these days I'm so happy because humans can be very annoying. So I really like my terminal, and I do a lot of my work in the terminal, not speaking to humans, thanks God. So yeah, from a PM, and then eventually just grew in my career, just climbed the ladder as a PM, senior PM, group product manager, director, VP, and now general manager. So yes, some of the companies that I worked for in the past, before the hype, by the way, I was actually just doing hardcore machine learning at Google. But then after GPT, we just went crazy. Even before Gemini, we had internal models at Google. I don't know if because this is not available here in Europe, but their virtual try-on feature at Google, especially if you want to just try out new clothes online, without purchasing. I was, one of the founding PMs back then at Google. I work on some very cool stuff as well at Zalando. Anyways, I had the pleasure to work on a lot of cool stuff, and today I'm a general manager, so I run product, engineering, design at commercetools. Unfortunately, I won't be able to disclose much because it is highly confidential, but stay tuned if you want to just connect on LinkedIn, because at commercetools, this is what I can tell you, it is AI native. So yeah, we're cooking really cool stuff again. Very cool. So before we get started and we dive into the topic, let me ask this question. If you're a PM, raise your hand. Let me just get a grip here on the audience. Okay, maybe 2% of the audience. Okay, PMs, I feel you. All right, okay, I got you. How about UX? And before, hold up, right? And because we might have researchers, UX designers, copywriters, whatever, all the different flavors of UX, just raise your hand. Jesus, man. Okay, so okay, so 95%. How about my fellow engineers? Once an engineer, always an engineer. Let's go, Java for life, okay? Okay, cool. All right, very good. So this, interesting. Let's see how this plays out. But let me tell you this. For a long time, we always had the triad. We still have, and that is very valid, right? So you have the PMs, and the way, when I coach people, and people are always curious, so hey, how do we separate the boundaries, the roles, responsibilities between these three functions? We have the PMs, and the PMs are usually in charge of the what's and the whys, right? And then essentially stakeholder management scale. So you gotta bring everybody together, and then based off of your ongoing research, you bring your stakeholders, and then you preach and you convince everybody. This is what we need to do. Those are the reasons why, et cetera, et cetera. Pair with the PM, you have one UX designer, or maybe the different flavors depending upon the scale of the company. UX researchers just researching the space, UX designers just mocking things up and then discussing with the engineers the potential trade-offs, and the PM is always in between. We're very opinionated. I don't know about the PMs here, so yeah, as our peers, they get really pissed off at times, but that happens, it's part of life. But then we have UX, and UX, traditionally, this function is in charge of the how from the user's perspective. So as a PM, I'll go back and forth a little bit, right? I have my product requirement, PRD. Does everybody know what PRD stands for? Product Requirements Document, feature brief, whatever. There are so many names. Essentially, a very long artifact that is supposed to describe what you want to build, right? And then sometimes this is a one-pager, two-pager, but this can blow up. And then, yeah, I've seen PRDs with 30 pages to describe every single edge case and then success metrics and the reasons why we got to build it. And man, it's a nightmare, right? So that's why at Google, I swear when I say that, I was reading 80% of my time, literally, like just huge, long artifacts. But okay, let's go back. So as I said, UX, it's always in charge of the how from a user standpoint. So you're supposed to be the guardian of the experience. What is that magical experience? Not only the mocks, right? Because I think you guys can relate to that. The misconception that UX is only about, just hand off the PRD to the UXer. They would just design whatever. And then, man, I hate when people diminish how critical this function is, and this will become more critical than ever. And we will get to that in just a little bit. And then I'm a little bit biased, not because of this event, maybe for me personally, but bear with me. And last but not least, engineering. So we are in charge of the how from a technical perspective, right? So PMs and UXers, so hey, stay away, so here are the boundaries, don't touch it. Don't dare to touch my code base, by the way, right? Because this is like my baby. So this is usually how things play out. Agree, disagree? Yeah? Okay, good. So then we're on the same page. All right, so then you have the PRD. At some point, as a PM, that person will hand off to the UX designer. So hey, here are the so-called specs. You're gonna mock something up. And then you're gonna hand it off to the engineers. Engineers will say, no, this is impossible, right? Because of course, PMs and UXers, we want to dominate the planet. Now, not only planet Earth, but we can conquer the galaxy as well. And then we're so far ahead of time, right? So this is how this plays out. And then the engineers will say, no, this is impossible. Or if you want this, if you want me to build this will take at least 2 quarters. And then in your mind, you're like, man, 2 quarters for this? This is so simple. But this is, as a former engineer, this is also a misconception, right? Because the devil lies in the details. Even simple things can turn out to be extremely complicated. So yes. But okay, this is the flow. So eventually, engineers will code that out. We will ship. However, by the time this gets shipped, the world look different. Because so many people, do you guys agree with this? Isn't this very waterfall, but we preach Agile all the time. But the whatever flavor of Agile underneath the hood follows this, right? Either we like it or not. But I do believe we can drastically change this. But okay, very good. All right, AI, however, now from this slide onwards, this is Gus' opinion and experience, okay? So feel free just to burn me alive if you want, but this is based on active observation, and then I'm in touch with the startup ecosystem here and outside, the enterprises as well. So it doesn't come from a random place. I want you to know that, just to set the scene. All right, but AI is erasing the boundaries between these two, between these 3 roles. Would you agree with that? Or maybe a little bit, right? Because it is challenging, but for different companies, this is happening. And let me tell you this, right? What is actually happening? So product managers, you ship, UXers, raise your hand, you guys ship, engineers, we all ship. Why so? Because AI commoditized the ability to ship. I'm not talking about the quality code, I'm not talking about what gets shipped, but this gives you the power to eventually just reach the customer. So, and then, by the way, the presenters, we've never met. And we're so, at least directionally, we're so aligned, right? Because even though AI can commoditize, But how about judgment and taste? Save those words. I'll get back to those. So this is the reality. But let me, man, fascinating because sorry, what's your name once again? Paul. So Paul framed the same question, maybe in a different way. Is this a new bottleneck? If everyone can ship, who decides what's worth shipping? And I think maybe to some degree, the previous presentation was focused on what you can do as a professional. But within an enterprise, this becomes a bottleneck. You know, I don't know if you guys follow different podcasts, but I was just watching the head of product at Anthropic. And then you guys know Anthropic is becoming the next Google. So either using cloud design, cloud code, whatever Anthropic product. And they were saying that this is the bottleneck because now an engineer has a really good idea, ship it. And because the product can be used internally, so how can you debate when the customers are inside the company? Isn't that beautiful? That you have your own company as customers and based off of the feedback, then you scale to the whole planet. This is incredible, right? And this is made possible with this technology. I'm not preaching about Anthropic. I'm just the underlying concepts that enable and unlock that, right? But the answer to this, in my case, and then that happens to be for Anthropic as well, it should be, okay, let me save that. It should be the customer always, come on, God, this is bullshit. Everybody will talk about that. Yeah, of course it's always the customer. Don't we say all the time that we're customer obsessed? In practice, are we actually customer obsessed or are we stakeholder obsessed? Why so? Your VP will say, I don't like the color of that button. I'm not sure about this requirement, Mr. PM or Miss PM. Man, I don't know. And this, I don't know, from I don't know to I don't know, you don't ship shit. And when you do ship, the world looks different, as we just discussed. But at least for my team, yes, we focus on this, the customer. How do we do that? We prototype first. And I think Paul alluded to this point a little bit. So what we do, we get different variants in front of the customers as quickly as possible because distribution, velocity, those are actually our strategy right now. It's not this fancy artifact that we talk about the whole planet for years and whatever, although we do spend time talking about strategy. But let me tell you this, strategy without execution is shit, but execution without strategy is even worse. But it's just spending, ages here within this trap, this is not gonna fly. So yes, we defer to prototype first. We can also talk about all the quality checks, getting to engineering, whatever, but you guys got the gist, right? So this is the focus. Instead of discussing, or maybe instead of playing the game of opinions, because everything is subjective to your opinion. My VP doesn't like it, who cares, right? In the end, what matters is what these guys care. But right now, you have the ability to get something really, really quick in front of the customers. This is what matters the most. So everything that we learn up to this point, or to a significant extent, I'm not saying that we need to trash that, but we will have to really change drastically. So save that. Let's move on. Gus, what are you doing? Now, this is in practice. I don't hire PM or UXers anymore. Let me tell you this, right? I was discussing with somebody from Anthropic, and they hired, now they're hiring people, and maybe you can just check it out by yourself. Hop on the website, at least the career page, and then you see this Frontier Labs, by Frontier Labs, Anthropic, OpenAI, and then some of the cutting edge companies that are working really cool stuff. They're now hiring ex-founders as generalists. The reason why is, maybe I would just hop to this, was this one? Hold up. No. Yeah, I wanted to get to this slide. This is what we call organized chaos, right? If you talk to people from Anthropic, man, it's messy on the inside. Everybody can ship. And then even one of, at least internally, one of the, at least the members of the product staff, that person will say, man, internally, it's hard to keep up with everything that we're shipping. Because the boundaries, are blurred. We all can do that. So that creates even a new mode on how we design companies, on how we talk about organizational design, right? So, but this is by design. This is a new paradigm. And let me tell you this for Europe, because I have the pleasure to talk to a bunch of leaders. This is the new bottleneck. Let me ask you this, in your company, how many times have you tried to use a tool, compliance, security said, oh no, not gonna happen. oh, no, this will have to go through all the security, compliance, quality checks. You know what people do? I'm gonna buy the license, I'm gonna get reimbursed. It's faster, right? At least I've done that in the past. So this is the new bottleneck. It's not the tech, it's not the tech. That's why, I joined at least an event, and then it was really cool, all the visuals, the concepts that the company was just putting forward in front of the audience. And I asked them, so hey, who's actually working on that? Because in Europe, I don't see none of this. And then he said, yes, nobody. Well, maybe the startups back in San Francisco, because they just accelerate. But there's a great opportunity. And this shouldn't become the bottleneck. It is at the moment. Let me go back. Yes, here. So Gus, what are you hiring right now? I'm hiring those product builders. So the PMs on my team, they should be able to wear a different hat. They do design as well. And then the designers, and this is the beauty, right? Designers, you have an edge. And I'll get to that towards the end of the presentation. But what if you develop that product sense and then you get to ship? You don't have to ask the permission for the PM any longer. Isn't that cool? Raise your hand if you find that cool as a let's go, come on. Even the engineers as well, I'm like, man, what is this PM doing? So I have an insight, ship it, right? So that's why the former PM is opinionated about the UX, because I remember when I was told, Gus, and I've been always very opinionated. I'm very opinionated as a person, right? But I couldn't talk about the UX. I could share my opinion, but then shut up. But now, no. It's by design. I want the PMs to be opinionated. I want you to design that. Look what Ben just shared, this, and then also what Paul could do in 4 hours. But how can the organizational boundaries just block off your creative thinking? This doesn't make any sense, right? And then the former designers, if you have a strong product sense, my team, they not only they shape and they ship the what's and the whys. So that's why, what are you? You're a product builder, you build stuff. And the engineers, instead of just using at least the different models not only as a co-pilot, you build with the model, not around it. It's not only a wrapper, but you just build that natively, right? So this is, and if you guys just follow maybe some of at least the big tech companies, we're transitioning. We're gonna witness this transition, right? So here in Europe, this will take time, right? Because I say, yeah, come on. Okay, here comes the guy, just talking about the future, blah, blah, blah. But we just heard, this is the present. This is already happening. So what are you going to do about it, right? Let's go. I talk about that. I talk about the chaos by design, yes. Okay, perfect. But let me tell you where this has taken me and my team, because this is a practical experience that you can perhaps leverage as inspiration, just food for thought, right? The surface is changing. We just heard about this notion that it was so cool that somebody finally spotted fluid UI. The term, it was new, but let me tell you this, users won't engage with your software the way they do today. Who here works for a SaaS company? Raise your hand. Okay, not a lot of people. Who here uses a lot of SaaS products? Maybe your stack is comprised of so many apps, right? Would you agree to at least to a significant extent that the actual UI is changing? Either you're using the terminal, like myself, like here, you might be using this. Oh, you guys like it, right? I got you. I caught the smile, man. I love it. So you might be using the terminal, but let me tell you this a little bit about my stack. As I said, I spend 80% in the black screen, and man, it feels so good, right? I don't have to actually switch between tools. So this is now introducing a new paradigm, a new way of engaging with software. But alongside my teams, we're taking one step further. And I even prototyped and I embedded a prototype because it's already happening. As I said, I wish I could disclose more about what we're doing, but I do hope you guys get the gist. So a new paradigm, a new way in. Let's have a look at this user career. So revenue last 30 days within Europe, and this is the context of e-commerce. Imagine that I am a brand manager, and I want to check the revenue. How do I do it right now? Either I have a shit ton of Excel spreadsheets or a bunch of Google Sheets, or I have to go to a dashboard and I have to filter everything. Who does that? I see people smiling. Yes, okay, yes, I can tell that people are doing that, myself included. But let's see what happens Based off of this query, this interface has been auto-generated on the fly. We heard that. And then you might be wondering, as a PM, what am I supposed to do if AI is dictating even the placement of all the UI elements? What do I do? Oh, Gus, I am now curating my design system, or I designed a pixel, or I design static experiences. That's fine, that's fine. But I can tell you, something is coming, you know? So this ability, yes. But let's take one step further because we have a couple of options here, right? So let's compare to the last quarter. And this is just a touch, right? And then, yes, AI can just identify what are the data sources, can package, can put in front of you. One challenge that I have, and this is the UX side of me just coming out, I love these different chat interfaces, but this is just pure science. It's just natural that we should expect something visual. You know, because AI is so good because the training data is a lot of text. Of course, it is good at producing, you know, blurbs of text that we don't read, full stop. But why so? We want to connect the dots. We need that visual element. But instead of having to memorize, where should I go in the UI, all the different flows and screens, I should be able to express what I want to achieve, and hopefully I can trust AI to figure it out, where to place and what to do. And this is exactly what I wanted to highlight here. So we will see the emergence of solutions that are outcome-oriented, not configuration heavy. I don't know, you know, the type of clients that you guys are working with and whatever, but this is at least a new pattern. So express what you want to achieve. You should trust the system to compose the experience for your customer. And this is the new pattern. So this is very specific to us here, UXers. So interfaces composed on the fly inside your domain, inside your boundaries, okay? So I don't know if you want to take a screenshot. And don't worry, I deployed this to Vercel. You guys have access. I was going to say, so if you guys want to follow along, but I thought, no, people will just skip the presentation to the good stuff. So let me wait for it. And by the way, that's the hyperlink, so you guys can just tag along. Okay, with that said, let me tell you how the nature of the work for my team has drastically changed. Because instead of you know, spending quite a bit of time on Figma and thinking of the handoff, what happened? Okay. Instead of staying on Figma, trying to design the pixel, and then at some point we get that in front of the customers, and then Bernd said, this can take weeks, but now what we do is we teach the models, we curate the domain. So let's say within, I don't know, e-commerce promotions. Imagine that every time that you go to a e-commerce shop, you see buy two, get one for free. Things like that. Imagine that domain. Right now, this is what we do. We teach the model, we curate the domain, and then we establish boundaries. Within the boundaries, then we give relative, if not full autonomy to the different models to compose the experience. And this is nuts, right? At least to me, as I started to embark on this journey, I was like, man, I was sitting with my designer, and then we were just, but we need to schedule 10 interviews. Okay, let's just automate all of that. So you get interviews for free, or you have syntactic data. So let me tell you something that we did. It is a very practical use case. We have a very large customer base. Getting hold of enterprise customers can take a bit of time. But whenever we engage with them, we record every single interaction, which is great. So imagine that I have this untapped database with crazy insights. So we personified that customer. So we derived, so we can at least just ask questions, or we even deployed our solutions, and we ran by that syntactic data that was built on top of every single interaction that we had with our customers. So instead of waiting for weeks because my customer is unavailable, at least I have a really good grip about the experience that we want to ship. But even better than that is, as I have access and I have the domain knowledge, I can forget about all the edge cases. I just think about how can I teach the model, because new situations will arise, new edge cases will pop up. I don't have time to design all of those. You know, if and else for every single edge case. No. Let AI think of how to compose, how to deal with that, right? So yes, you may not design the pixel. However, the underlying need remains. And this is the point. So let's get my next slide. Let's go. I heard a lot from people, Gus, if this is happening, what's left for me to do? If the core of my work right now is to, I don't know, manage a design system, and even the design systems have been commoditized by orders of magnitude, right? Just at least import ChatCN, you can style on top, it will look okay, right? And then you can easily deploy that. Or if you say, Gus, yes, I'm still in Figma or using whatever solution of your choice to design the pixel. But I can tell you this, your function will not disappear, it will evolve. The nature of the job. If I can give one piece of advice, because people underestimate that, never in history the core of our work was so technical. Very technical. Oh man, very technical. And then, yes, I know even though I'm a former engineer, I talk to people and then people are like, man, it's hard to keep up. I know that, right? The flow of information, every single day something comes out. But I think Paul alluded to that. It is very technical and that is true. But there is a price to pay if you want to become an A player, okay? But if you want to become an average player, that's okay. I'm not here diminishing that. It really depends on what you want as a professional. Right, so I want you guys to walk away with this, and this is very practical for every single function. As a UXer, I can prompt and I can ship. That will give me a prototype. Only us can finish what others can only sketch. I love that, man. I love that. So that's your edge. You know, that is lop shit that we see all over the place. And then you hop on LinkedIn and you see people, oh yeah, who said that? Figma will die. Although I might agree with that, but of course it's for later. I don't know, maybe just food for thought. But you got the gist, right? All of these very exaggerated statements. But then as a UXer, you can easily spot that is shit because your evaluation skill was built on top of years and years of experience. And then, yes, remind me your name?
Mario.
Huh? Mario, yes, Mario was saying, and then I was alluding to that. The industry doesn't talk enough about taste, about judgment, you know, about the chef in the kitchen, just, you know, thinking about the special sauce. Yes, you can build whatever you want, but what does good look like? What is the definition of good, right? What is the limit of your imagination? Only experience and knowing exactly where to go, exactly the sources to actually leverage for you. That's why, you know, in my day-to-day, I think a lot about that. How do I leverage? What are the key sources? You know, I do not delegate strategic thinking. I want you guys to also, you know, write it down. Tattoo that if you want. Don't delegate your thinking to AI. You're gonna get dumb. You will become so dependent, but all of these foundational models are training on data. But we heard that. How do you orchestrate these different tools? This is the difference. And then at some point, all of us may know how to orchestrate all of that, but judgment. Who is gonna be the first one to have that killer insight and monetize on top of it? It's all about that. So, you know, okay, this is us UXers. Product people, and then be aware. Being the glue isn't enough anymore, right? So you just run around the company, you try to align everybody, bring everybody together. You're gonna write a really good PRD, don't get me wrong, right? But even the act of writing and producing an okay-ish documentation, yes, these models are so good at it. And then sometimes I'm like, man, yes, the output was legit. I was like, crazy. So my invitation for PMs, because at least PMs are known for being, I don't know, the voice of the customer, the voice of the business, or whatever proxy that you want to use. But I tell them, you guys got to learn the foundations of the adjacent functions, okay? And that also applies to at least UXers as well. Because you're going to hop on a call to discuss the output of the model, that will sound Greek to you. It cannot. It just cannot, okay? Simply put. For UX, for product people, if you don't have the foundations of computer science, UX, legal, marketing, pricing, the core of what you do right now, that will go away. It will, right? Because that's why these companies are hiring product builders, the generalists, or ex-founders, because as a founder, you do all of that and even more. And engineers, we can ship anything, right? So we know what good looks like. So my invitation is invest in the craft of your peers. Become a very product-centric engineer. And I can tell you, you can change the world. These 3 functions. For UXers, and then here's my bias, I do believe you guys have an edge because this taste of what good looks like, you guys have this skill better than the adjacent functions. And this is such a key differentiator. It's not how good you are using Figma, or at least not anymore. Who cares about that, right? With all the respect, because you can do everything using all of these CLI tools. Man, that was me, apologies. Yes, okay, but back to my biased opinion on UX. Yes, invest in that, become more technical, but don't lose, but invest, double down, triple down, 10x, the time you invest in studying, understanding what is product sense, what is good taste, what makes a difference in a product, and then you guys are definitely ahead. Because the rest, we kind of commoditized. So we commoditize the act of writing to a significant extent. Okay, if we have writers, authors here, don't get me wrong, but yes, but this piece here is a key differentiator moving forward. Period. And then it will only become more valuable. I couldn't agree more with Paul. Great. This is what I see. 90% plus of people are barely scratching the surface. Oh, I use ChatGPT. I interview a lot of people, and then I ask them, so hey, I want you to know how you're using at least AI. Yes, I use Copilot. Great, that's awesome. You can do loads with it. Or I use ChatGPT, or I have a gem, or I use NotebookLM, and I do this, I do that. That's great. This is level 1. This is, everybody to a large extent is here. But then when I ask people, so hey, do you know the underlying architecture of Cloud Code? Oh. What have you designed using AI? Show me. What traffic did you generate for your solution? If I'm speaking to a PM that applied for a position, I don't hear that. Because only a few people that can drive real impact, they take the time to go deep. Not to scratch the surface. It's not only prompt, this one-shot prompt that would just spit out an interface. Let me tell you this, you just heard one of the biggest challenges right now, distribution. Prototype whatever the heck you want. Use Lovable, V0, Base 44, Figma Make, you name it. Give me one, and then yes, I've tried them all. You can do that. You can ship good stuff, don't get me wrong. But what lies underneath is what makes the difference for you to drive impact at scale. Full stop, period. And then if you have at least a contradicting thought about this, I'll love to debate with you. Yes, okay, very good. My mission, and this is how I think about especially us in Europe, let's become full stack professionals, not full stack engineers, full stack professionals. So from idea to delivery to market, because distribution, learning go to market, marketing, how to price an AI product in this era of token economy. This is what I really want Europe to become. I want to see more of that. Full stack professionals, people that can only conceive an idea, but you have the foundations to design something that is rock solid to the point that you can ship to production. All right? And then remember, there's a new paradigm because shipping and a static experience, yes, there is room for that. But we also need to think about how can you build with AI, because a new paradigm is being introduced. This new paradigm is already changing the way that we do our work, okay? So if you guys want to connect and know more, so just add me on LinkedIn, drop me a message, and yeah, thank you so much. And then,